Sorry, cadet. Don't come here anymore. It only takes a few months to awaken your hunter abilities. But you've been here for 7 years, and you haven't achieved anything in that time. I'll tell you straight, you're a talentless idiot. Laughter and contempt could be felt from those standing behind Han Sang-gyun. 7 years ago, a cataclysm occurred all over the world. Strange dungeons opened up, and monsters began to appear from them. Many people died that day, and Sang-gyun's parents were no exception. So he swore to become a hunter and tear all the monsters to pieces. But now he's been kicked out of the center. Not only has he not received a single ability in that time, but even his stats haven't gone up. How is that even possible? Behind Han Sang-gyun, near the memorial statues, stood a mother and daughter. The mother asked her daughter if she had forgotten the story of how her father died. No, the girl answered. I remember everything word for word. At the moment when the gates opened and the monsters attacked the people, the world was not ready to fight back. But Dad did not run away and continued to save people. Mom nodded approvingly. We will meet any difficulty with our heads held high and will never give up. Hearing this brought Sang-kyung back to his senses. He walked up to them and bowed, then quickly ran away. He couldn't give up. He had been trying for 7 years, and he couldn't let it all go to waste. Having reached the house where the instructor lived, he knocked on the door. But as soon as the door opened, the instructor said, "Get out! Just this once, help me pass the hunter exam. I can't give up," said Sang-kyung. But the instructor only got angry. You're a talentless person, or did you come to return the money you spent on training? Sang-kyung wanted to object, but then received a strong blow to the face. Flying into a pile of garbage, he heard from the instructor, "I'm sure it was because of the money, bastard." In the pile of garbage, Sang-kyung thought in despair, if he had even a drop of talent or a unique ability, he wouldn't be here. Suddenly,
"The TowerOfTrials is praising you for your iron will."
"You praising? Who is this?" Sang-kyung began to sink in the puddle as if it had no bottom. He began to scream for help in fear. The angry instructor went out to chase the talentless cadet away again, but found that he was already gone. In his hand, he was holding the cap that had flown off Sang-kyung's head. Not understanding where he had disappeared to, he threw it in the trash and left. At this time, the guy continued to drown. The air in his lungs was running out, but suddenly he fell out of the water into zero gravity. The place resembled space with many universes. In front of him, he saw a system notification.
"The TowerOfTrials has selected all suitable candidates from Earth."
TowerOfTrials? Could it be that a second cataclysm has happened? The surprised guy thought.
"Please select your difficulty. The rewards you get will be directly proportional to your chosen difficulty."
Sang-kyung had no idea what was going on here. His inner instinct told him to take advantage of this chance. Having chosen the difficulty, his body began to move to the first floor of the tower. The next second, Sang-kyung found himself in the desert, which clearly surprised him. System window.
"A weapon will be provided."
A sword appeared out of thin air and pierced the sand in front of Sang-gyun.
"The subject of this trial is survival. Reward for completing the trial. Releasing a unique trait."
So I get a unique characteristic as a reward? Something I've been wanting to get for the past 7 years, working on myself every day. Haha, it's crazy. This is a real jackpot. Sang-kyung decided to take the sword, when suddenly the sand under him began to rise sharply. Turning around, he saw the huge sand golem stood before Sang-kyung, who was clearly shocked by its size.
"TowerOfTrials. Chosen difficulty. Hard."
So I need to survive by dodging the golem's attacks for a certain amount of time. With these thoughts, he ran away from the sand giant, who was about to crush him with its foot. Suddenly, a system notification appeared in front of him. The words written there shocked the boy.
"Penalty for failing the trial. Death."
While running away from the golem, Sang-kyung thought about how to get away from it. Although the golem looked slow due to its size, it moved much faster than he expected. The meaning of the test was obvious. Either die running away or face death. Sang-kyung ran away in horror, not understanding how he could defeat this thing. Suddenly, he remembered the faces of those who had recently mocked him at the training center, and the words he heard, "You are nothing in this world." All these memories flashed through his mind, making him think, won't they be right if I die like this, running away without even trying to do anything? No, he firmly told himself. For 7 years, all I did was challenge the hunter exam. So, when it comes to theory, I can proudly say that I know better than any current hunter. Monsters like golems stop moving when their core is destroyed. What if the core is in an unreachable place for me? In that case, I will create conditions in which I can reach it. Sang-kyung jumped down from the top of a large dune, just as the golem struck with its fist. Using his sword as a brake to avoid being hit by the golem's heavy body, he achieved the desired result. The golem fell, giving him the opportunity to strike. Having jumped on the golem, he was right next to the core. Without waiting for the golem to get up, the youth made a powerful swing, hitting the core with his blade with all the force he had in his body. But, knocking out many sparks, the blade bounced off the core, and Sang Kyung, with his hands shaking from the recoil, saw only a small crack. "Damn!" he exhaled. The core was much stronger than I thought. At that moment, the golem began to move. Realizing that he had no other chance, the boy tried to strike again. But the golem's huge hand grabbed Song Gyun with such force that blood burst out of his mouth. At that moment, he did not see a golem in front of him. It was an instructor who repeated, "Empty space, talentless, stupid." This vision gave Sang Gyun rage and strength, who was going to prove to the whole world who he was. Throwing his blade with all his might, he hit the edge right into the crack from the previous blow. The golem clearly did not expect such cunning from a small man and began to fall apart.
You have destroyed the core of the sand golem. Remaining time, 7 minutes, 8 seconds. You have completed the tutorial trial.
Rising from the pile of sand, Song Kyung couldn't believe that he had actually done it. His body was badly damaged, as evidenced by the bloodstains on his clothes and face. Even though he was one step away from death, a smile appeared on his face. Song Kyung laughed as he said, "I survived."
Congratulations, you have cleared the first floor of the TowerOfTrials. As a clear reward, you have earned Unlock Unique Traits. As a clear reward, you have obtained 1,000 points. As an additional clear reward, you have earned the skill Fast Recovery E+.
Surprised, Song Kyung just stared at all these notifications. He couldn't believe what was happening. He had spent the last 7 years trying to awaken the ability within himself, only to receive ridicule and contempt in return.
You have unlocked a unique trait. You have been titled with the unique trait Necromancy.
Now, Song Kyung could become a hunter. But all his efforts would only be worth it if he survived. Suddenly, a black and red fog appeared in front of the protagonist's eyes, right at the spot where he killed the golem. Surprised by what he saw, he extended his finger towards the core. A system notification asked if he wanted to absorb the sand golem's spirit. "So, this black fog is my unique characteristic," he whispered. Clicking the yes button, Sang Kyung saw all of this black fog rushing into his chest, absorbing into his body. After absorbing the sand golem's spirit, Sang Kyung noticed a notification saying that his job had been raised to 7%.
Number of souls in possession, 1 out of 5. You can permanently increase your stats by the spirits you have obtained.
A red glow enveloped his body, and new strength spread throughout him.
Your strength increased by 3. Your health increased by 2.
His stats had really increased. He could feel it. Previously, he had trained for years to raise even one stat, but he had become stronger. If he returned with this ability, he would definitely be able to become a hunter. A portal to the waiting room appeared in front of Song Kyung. He slowly approached the portal, realizing that he had no other choice. Finding himself in the room, exhausted, Sang Kyung fell to the floor, dropping his blade. His injuries were very serious, but the next moment, a bright light enveloped his body. Sang Kyung felt his entire body recover, and he no longer felt pain or damage. Noticing the bed, he headed towards it and simply lay down, allowing himself to rest for a while. Thoughts about the future swirled in his head, an unknown tower that had thrown him here. For what purpose? Suddenly, notifications appeared in front of him. So, I can use 5 commands that will automatically appear when I say them. Information, shop, inventory, community, trials. Sang Kyung patted his cheeks to focus. Right now, he needed to think about how to survive. So, he called out the trials command.
Time until second floor trial. 23 hours, 21 minutes. You cannot select the trial yet. Please wait.
I knew it, Sang Kyung exhaled. There are still so-called trials ahead of me. He used the community command, and a chat opened in front of him. Many messages from other lucky ones flashed before his eyes. Someone was asking about the second cataclysm, and some were wondering where their stats had disappeared. Sang Kyung realized that both ordinary people like him and those who were already hunters had been dragged here. The admin entered the chat. The chat was disabled. We have important information to share with those who have cleared the tutorial trial. We will teach you how to use the points you have earned during the tutorial trial. The points are used as currency within the TowerOfTrials and are most commonly used in the shops. You may also use the community to give or receive points from others. Within the TowerOfTrials, you cannot get even a single drop of water without points. Points can only be earned through trials. In short, I need to adapt to life in this tower by any means necessary. After all, if I don't challenge, I will be doomed to a hungry and painful death. If he returned, he could immediately become a hunter. Looking at his sword, Sang-kyung thought that it was not enough to survive here. After some time, Sang-kyung was practicing training combat stances with a sword and shield in his hands. In order to catch up with all the hunters in his world, he had to train. After falling to the floor exhausted, he again noticed a strange glow appearing around him. Thanks to the healing effect of the waiting room, he was able to devote enough time to training, but because of it, he became very hungry. Sang-kyung called up his inventory and asked dissatisfiedly why the room did not cure hunger too. There were already enough items in his inventory that he bought from the shop. Now, he only had 40 points left. If not for the additional reward for completing the first trial, he could only dream of a shield. There were 17 minutes left until the start of the second trial. Even the chat window, where there were always messages, had become much less. Sang-kyung wondered if he could survive, but despite this, he was determined to pass all the tests. With these thoughts, he entered the portal that appeared in front of him, transporting him to the forest. The test conditions appeared before his eyes.
Kill the orc chieftain within the allotted time.
Sang-kyung stood at the edge of the cliff, looking at the orc settlement. So I have to go into a place infested with orcs and kill their leader? Hiding in the bushes near the entrance to the village, Sang-kyung carefully observed the orc tribe. It was believed that if there was an orc sentry in the dungeon, there would also be a ranger. Right now, he barely had enough strength to deal with one ranger, let alone a crowd of orcs. In order to defeat the orc settlement, ordinary E-rank hunters needed to form a party, so Sang-kyung's chances were close to zero. For starters, he decided to retreat and think of a strategy. It was at this moment that a great idea came to him. After collecting enough logs and making a torch from the scrap materials he bought at the store, he tried putting it in his inventory, and it worked. Mostly the huntsmen go hunting in the morning and return by sunset, so there is enough time. The only way to overcome the numerical superiority is fire. This is his only chance. According to the Hunters Association, the orc sentry does not stand guard all the time. He leaves his post during meals. Sang-kyung decided to use this moment. Scattering the torches he had prepared in advance, he set fire to the village. The flames engulfed it entirely. The plan was to catch several orc workers who would run to the nearest body of water. One of the workers ran to the body of water last, and while his green brothers were already returning, he had just started to collect water. Sang-kyung took advantage of this. He crept up and killed the orc with one blow, activating his unique skill. Necromancy, he absorbed the spirit of the killed orc, increasing his skill to 9%. Suddenly, he noticed a huge orc behind him. It was the sentry. A huge blow fell on Sang-kyung, who barely managed to block it with his shield. Thanks to the absorbed spirit, his strength and agility had already increased by 4 and 2 points. Overcoming the pain and fatigue, Sang-kyung was able to defeat the orc sentry. Activating the skill again, he absorbed the enemy's spirit again. Now Sang-kyung had enough strength to not die in a skirmish with another orc guard. And all that distinguished him from the target were 3 orc workers and 1 orc sentry. Without giving his enemies time to think, Sang-kyung made 3 quick lunges and instantly killed the orc workers. They no longer posed any danger to him. The only one who was truly dangerous was the orc guard. Taking advantage of the blind spot behind the body of the dead worker, the guard dealt a crushing blow to Sang-kyung, who managed to block it with his shield. The blow was so strong that the bones in his arm broke in several places. Realizing that he had no time, Sang-kyung jumped under Orc's blow, miraculously avoiding losing his head, and dealt a fatal blow to the enemy's chest. At this moment, the chieftain, who had seemingly been inactive all this time, finished casting a fireball and sent it at Sang-kyung, who had just defeated the guard. There was no time to dodge, and all Sang-kyung could do was take the tribe chieftain's blow with his shield. The orc was sure that he had finished off the enemy, but suddenly he saw a silhouette that was still standing. This greatly frightened the chieftain. Sang-kyung, who had withstood the blow, received a new skill, resistance to burns. Luck is also an ability. The protagonist headed towards the chieftain, intending to finish him off, but he began to create a new fireball. The next moment, his hands were cut off. Screaming in intense pain, the chieftain tried to hide in his house. Clearly irritated, Sang-kyung decided to finish what he had started. Cutting off the cloth that served as a semblance of a door, he saw the chieftain hugging his 2 offspring. One of the orc cubs touched Sang-kyung's leg with a trembling hand, as if asking for mercy. Remembering his family that had died in the disaster, Sang-gyong hesitated for a moment. Taking advantage of this, the small green creature took out a small knife and tried to stab him. In rage, he struck the small freak's head with the hilt of his sword. "What could I be thinking?" flashed through his mind. "The monsters are completely different from me." Sang-gyong no longer had any doubts in his heart. He exterminated the chieftain along with his small offspring.
Congratulations, you have passed the second floor of the tower.
The shield had become unusable, but it was thanks to it that he was able to survive. Browsing the community chat, which had halved after the test, Sang-gyun noticed an interesting message. It said that one of the participants had found out how to get to the Earth. It turns out that in the information field you could ask your question, and the admin would answer it. After digging a little in the chat, he found out the key points. After overcoming the 5th floor, special stones will appear, with the help of which you can return to the Earth for a few days. And from the 8th floor, a large-scale expansion of the system will be made, and items will go on sale that allow you to return to the Earth forever. Sang-gyun thought that if he returned to the Earth with the skills he had now, then at best, he could become an A-rank hunter. On the Earth, the ability he received would be considered unique, but here, he barely overcame 2 floors. The 8th floor is like the moon. There is a chance the stats that previously remained at 0 are now close to the average 20 points. But first, you need to absorb the 5 spirits that Sang-gyun got. Having absorbed all their energy, which spread throughout his body, he looked again at his stats, which had increased. The power that he began to feel began to overwhelm him. He took off. Now he was beyond human capabilities. But not used to the new power, he couldn't slow down in time and crashed into the wall, making an imprint in it. He needs to train so that his body gets used to new sensations. After opening the store, Sang-gyong bought a shield of a large dead tree that buffs when stamina decreases. Black iron sword increases reaction speed and attack speed by 5 and 10%. Assassin's cloak increases speed by 15% with a cooldown of 24 hours. After getting dressed, Sang-gyong decides to do a couple of training sessions to get used to his new outfit. After going through the portal, he finds himself in a cave. The mission for this floor is a duel. A system notification alerted him that the Guardian would appear in 10 seconds. Sang-gyong got into a fighting stance, ready to react at any second.
The Guardian of Darkness is entering.
A black mist appeared behind Sang-gyong's back, and when he caught the movement, he wanted to turn around, but was immediately wounded in the side by his own shadow. The creature smiled faintly as it performed such a sneaky trick.
3rd floor trial, duel, defeat your double.
Turning around, Sang-gyong kicked the shadow to break the distance. The shadow, similar to venom, stuck out its tongue, anticipating a fight. Activating the accelerated regeneration skill, Sang-gyong thought that if he had not reacted to the movement, then now his spine was broken in half. The shadow at this time stood in the same stance as him. Now he is fighting with his reflection. Having made a sharp lunge and reduced the distance, Sang-gyong performed a false lunge, straight after which he changed the trajectory to the side. The creature turned towards its opponent and immediately received a blow with a sword. The protagonist had already gained distance again, looking at the enemy and the wound that goes along the chest. He grinned, which means that the recovery skill is also there. The shadow rushed to attack, repeating Sang-gyong's movement with a false lunge, but he expected this, so before the creature struck, it received a kick in the side, which caused the blade of the sword not to reach the target. All he needs is to use his own shortcomings in fencing to defeat the Guardian of the 3rd floor. Attacking Sang-gyun was glad that the enemy only had to defend himself, but suddenly a sharp counterattack slowed the pace a little. Having repelled the blade of the shadow, he did not understand what just happened. Could this creature really copy any of his movements so quickly? In addition, there were 59 seconds left until the end of the duel. There was no choice. Activating the buff from the cloak, Sang-gyun rushed into a frontal attack. Dodging a quick sword strike, he dove under his opponent and delivered a stabbing blow to the heart. Glad that he succeeded, he did not notice how the shadow's hand stretched out and cut off his arm just below the shoulder. Blood splashed on his face, and the pain was unbearable, as his scream indicated. He looked at the shadow, which did not move. The opponent could reactivate recovery, so he needed to finish the fight right now. The buff from the cloak would last for another 11 seconds, which meant there was only one way out. Run up and hit with his whole body, as if I were a truck at high speed. Seeing the movement, the monster swung his rubber hand for the finishing blow, but it was too late. At that very second, Sangyan introduced him to his shield at full speed. A grimace of pain and surprise was on the monster's face, which immediately flew away, as if he really had been hit by a truck, only it was unlikely that he would get into an isekai. Sharp bones were sticking out from his broken body. The monster was about to activate recovery, but at that very moment, he noticed his enemy, who was already standing next to him, preparing to deliver a powerful blow with his shield. Rage gave Sangyun strength, so his powerful blow crushed the head of the damn monster, decapitating him. As soon as Sangyong entered the waiting room, he looked at his recovered hand in surprise. Approaching the net, he decided to check if it was really okay. Swinging, he hit with all his might. A huge crater formed at the site of the blow. The healing was truly incredible here. But more importantly, it was the soul he received. The soul of the double was incomparable to the previous ones. It was so dense and strong. Having absorbed the soul of the double, the mastery of the skill, necromancy, increased from rank F to rank E. Now, the additional effect of absorbing spirits allowed with some probability to absorb one of the skills imprinted in the soul. Sangyong could never have imagined that he would have such an insanely strong, unique characteristic, even considering that there is only a probability to assign a skill. Opening the team chat, he again ran his eyes through the messages. One was able to attract his attention. Someone wrote that the next test would be combined. Sang-kyung was thinking about whether there would be a joint test or a team formed. One of the chatters wrote, "If this is a competition between hunters, then wouldn't that mean killing each other?" This message scared Sang-kyung a little, because it meant that in the next test, he might have to kill a human.
You have been matched with another challenger. The 4-floor trial will now begin. Remaining time 1 day. Common trial clear condition. Defeat the Goblin King within the remaining time. Challenger team dies, or remaining time elapses. Trial failure penalty, death.
Appearing in the clearing, Sang-yong saw 2 more participants. It was some kind of muscle man in armor and a girl. Before that, he had only seen monsters. Now he felt a little awkward. The girl spoke first. She offered to get acquainted, since they were now a team. Her name is Lee Haeyeon. She specializes in providing team support. On the Earth, she is an E-rank hunter. Lee Sung-hun, close combat, outside the tower, a D-rank hunter. Sang-yong immediately did not like his arrogant behavior. On the Earth, D-rank hunters were more polite. My name is Han Sang-yong. I also specialize in close combat. Outside, I am not a hunter. I am just undergoing training. Sung-hoon immediately turned on the redneck mode and expressed his dissatisfaction that Sang-yong is just a cadet. "Just don't fucking bother me," Sung-hun said. "However, I am sure that I fight well, and I can cope with the assigned role," said Sang-yong. But the dumb jock just laughed, saying that if he considered the cadet a burden, he would immediately kill him. Sang-yong was used to such looks. For a moment, he even forgot about that nightmare. "Hey cadet, just stay back and take care of the small mobs." This fool infuriated Sang-yong because he understood that now he was no weaker than him. After all, in the Tower of Trials, everything is decided by skills. The trial has begun. As they moved through the city, they were attacked by goblin squads. The armored man was barely holding back the onslaught of 3 goblins. He couldn't understand how goblins could move in such a battle formation. He shouted at Sang-kyung if he was going to fight. This angered him, because this dumb jock wasn't even looking in his direction. At this time, Lee Haeyeon was casting another support spell for Sung-hoon, while he was holding back the goblins. Approaching the girl, Sang-kyung said that he would have to leave her for a while to help Sung-hoon. She tried to stop him, but he had already rushed forward. She continued to shout after him. Who would cover her back? When suddenly she saw that all the goblins behind her had long since died. At this time, the pretty tired big guy began to gradually give up his position. The goblins' combined attacks caught him off guard, causing him to miss a mace strike and lose his sword. The creature was about to split his head in 2. Screaming in horror, Sang-hun prepared for death, when suddenly someone cut the goblin like a carrot. Shitting himself with fear, he saw the chopped goblin and the cadet standing in front of him. Turning around, Sang-gyun said, "Mr. Sang-hun, you're fucking bother right now." After which, in a matter of seconds, he destroyed all the goblins in his path. System notification. You have obtained the accomplishment Goblin Hunter. A black and red mist enveloped Sang-kyung. It reached out to him from the bodies of dead goblins. He was surprised. It meant that no one except him could see the effect of his unique skill, which meant that he would be able to absorb the souls of enemies without any problems. Suddenly, a system notification informed him that he had absorbed one of the skills of a goblin guard. Guard's View. That was the name of the skill. Having activated it, he saw the world from a wider angle. Another jackpot. When it was all over, Song-hun laughed loudly. He was babbling something about luck, and that the cadet was lucky, because they were just weak goblins. Lee Hyung and Song Kyung silently looked at the idiot, after which Sang Kyung said that he would lead the operation and move in the vanguard. He looked at Song-hun and asked if he had any objections. Immediately realizing the situation he was in, the big man in armor calmed down his ardor, asking what other instructions there would be. Your task is to protect the huntress Lee Hae-yeon, and nothing more. And to you, he addressed the girl. Provide support based on the terrain, in other words, the same as you did before. The following hours of the road were the same, skirmishes with goblin squads. On the way, Sang-kyung absorbed all the souls of the killed goblins, thereby increasing the skill of E-rank necromancy by 12%. There were 14 hours and 37 minutes left until the end of the test. Moving calmly for some time, Lee Hae-yeon said that it became too quiet when suddenly, Sang-kyung noticed something in front. Abruptly tearing himself away from the spot, he ran towards what he saw. The companions became a little nervous, but the next moment, they saw a small square strewn with goblin corpses. Seong-hun was surprised at how quickly their opponents were moving, while Seong-kyung noticed that the blood was still warm. They needed to hurry, because if the other team won, his companions and he were doomed to die. With these thoughts, he said that they needed to, in a hurry. At this time, somewhere in the city, someone knocks a sword on a large shield, attracting the attention of a large crowd of goblins. One of the goblins suddenly felt someone climb on his back. A hunter with 2 daggers sat right on top of the surprised monster. The hunter was already clearly irritated by the monotonous battle against the goblins. Suddenly, 2 emboldened goblins jumped out of the crowd of monsters. They wanted to defeat the enemy so much that they killed their bro. The next moment, the hunter who parried the goblins' attacks rushed to kill the monsters. The 2 teammates praised their leader, who was clearly irritated that he had to do everything alone. He even makes fun of one of his teammates, after which he orders him to open the boss's room. Ji-hoo, the guy with the shield, obediently went to carry out the order, although he clearly did not like it. Before reaching the door, the system notification notified everyone that all the conditions had been met. Both teams reached the Goblin King's lair. A red barrier began to appear from the ground, and notifications continued to inform the players. Now, no one will leave this zone until only one team remains alive. The leader of the second group cursed in displeasure, while the white-haired man noticed Sang-kyung's group approaching. "Fuck, I wanted to finish quickly," said the man with daggers. Seeing the enemies, Sang-kyung warned his team. He was going to fight alone. The only thing he needed was a dexterity buff. She could give all the other buffs to Seong-hun. The girl trusted him without a doubt, because during the entire trial, she had managed to see Sang-kyung's strength. But perhaps people would be scarier than all these monsters. He thanked she for the warning, so if he felt danger, he would give a signal. Until then, I count on your support. Sang-kyung was convinced. He had surpassed the skill level of an average hunter. In addition, he had just killed more than 30 goblins. 3 opponents began to move, preparing for battle. Sang-kyung decided not to hesitate any longer, and rushed at full speed towards the enemies. Gaining crazy speed, he approached the enemies. The leader of the second team felt the outgoing danger, so he commanded Ji-hoo to use his ability. Activating it, a magical barrier appeared around the teammates, emitting a golden glow. At great speed, Sang-kyung brought down his blow straight at the magical shield. The blow was so strong that the defense immediately crumbled into small pieces, throwing Ji-hoo back with a shockwave. Without slowing down even for a second, Sang-kyung closed the distance, killing 2 enemies with a quick movement, and only the third was able to block his blow. Sung-hoon and Lee Hyung were clearly amazed by what they had just seen. Sang-kyung made quick lunges with his sword, but the hunter managed to block every blow. He did not understand the trick here, because the enemy's skills were clearly inferior, but he still blocked every blow. Having made a feint, he deftly jumped behind the enemy's back. Intending to finish him off with one strong blow, the enemy was able to block Sang-kyung's blow again, but this was what allowed him to unravel his peculiarity. He is able to see the trace of the blade aimed at him, which is why he was able to parry the blows every time, throwing his shield at the enemy, thereby narrowing his field of vision. Sang-kyung made a sharp dash towards him, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. Using this trick, he still managed to deceive the enemy's defense and carry out a successful attack by stabbing him with his sword. The system immediately notified about the completion of a special task, as well as that bonuses would be added to the reward for passing the floor. Coming closer, Lee Hyeon noticed how Sang Kyung's hand was shaking. She guessed that this was the first time he killed a person. She asked if everything was okay, and although Sang Kyung looked devastated, he said that he was fine. Do you mind if we fight the boss right now? Sung Hoon and Lee Hyun supported their leader. After some time, we are shown the wounded Goblin King. Song Kyung jumped on his back and delivered the finishing blow. The Goblin King's body collapsed dead, and the system notification notified the team members about the successful completion of the 4th floor.
Their reward for completion is an increase in all stats by 4. You have obtained the skill Instant Acceleration D rank, F an additional reward.
Sung Hoon was a little scared by Sang Kyung's strength. So as soon as the portals to the waiting room were opened, he said his goodbyes and left. Lee Hye-yeon and Sang Kyung were left alone. He was about to say goodbye to her, but she spoke first. Her words may be out of place, but you only did what you had to. Someone had to kill the enemy team anyway, and if he refused to do so, then she would have entered the battle. Hearing this, Sang Kyung admitted that after her words, he felt better. Lee Hye-yeon sent a friend request and then said, "It can be said that the test of the 4th floor was completely passed due to your strength. That's why I felt like I was inferior to you. It makes me uneasy." As she was about to enter the portal, she added, "In the future, when you return to Earth, find Lee Haeon from the White Guild," after which she disappeared into the portal. Sang Kyung turned to the black-red fog that was floating in the air everywhere. The cores were hovering above the bodies of the defeated enemies and giving off a slight glow. All this time, the question was in his head. Should he absorb the human soul or not? When he made sure that he was capable of this, he postponed the absorption process for later. After all, he felt that he was about to cross an irreversible line. But now I have made up my mind. With these words, he began to absorb human souls. Although he has no intention of killing people, but in a situation where there is no right to choose, and in addition to his very first desire to become a hunter, new ambitions have already begun to grow in his soul. Sang Kyung will definitely take advantage of the chance that the tower gave. He will conquer all floors on the way to the top of the tower.